Yo, how are you doing, folks? Just checking my audio levels. Just finished a live with Chongus420 on Instagram, which ran a little bit longer than I was expecting. How are you doing, folks? Ooh, it says there's no one here. Alright, that's weird. It's in the top corner, there's 0 people, but there's 1 viewer. Hello, 1 viewer, wherever you are. Welcome to the weekly Simpa Life live stream where I chat shit, smoke some quality high grade, and catch you up on, I suppose, the previous week's news events. We discuss the Simpa Life podcast, and we discuss as well the various blogs that I've been producing and content that I've been working on. Sorry, I just realized how bright my light is. Blue is not good. There you go, that's soft. It's really throwing it with. I'm wearing a Next Level Flavors t-shirt that he sent as this horse, but it's such, the finish on it is so shiny and so reflective. Oh, sorry, I haven't turned off these notifications over here, or turned on the multi-stream chat. There we go. Sweet. Right, how are you this evening, you fine folks? As I was just saying before, I've just finished a live stream with Chongus420 over on Instagram. Really cool chat. They've been doing a weekly thing where they are getting various people from the cannabis industry and cannabis community around the UK to answer sort of a few pre-select questions, so like favorite skins, sort of favorite strain, stuff like that. It was really quite a good experience. Evening, Wayne. How are you keeping? Big up to the YouTube and Facebook crew. How are you this evening? I'm hoping to get 2 whole Twitches this evening. That's my dream, my vision. But we'll see what comes of it. And we're back. Welcome back, Ben. Hope you enjoyed the Chongus chat. That was a little bit longer than I intended to. Obviously, that's the reason I'm a couple of minutes late here, guys. I did, obviously, you may have noticed, to change my t-shirt because I sweated through the other one with the sheer amount of talking that I did in the previous live stream. Evening, Amy. Hope everybody is well. Evening, Lawrence. How are you doing? It's weird. I keep going to read the word evening, and I'm seeing behind me that it's daylight. It still hasn't quite kicked in that the clocks have changed. I am enjoying some of, in fact, the last of, unfortunately. Boo-hoo. The OZK by Next Level Flavors. Big shout out to Next Level Flavors. It's a lovely bud. It is a very, very lovely bud. Need to get this second camera sorted out so I can actually show you how quality these flowers are, because that just does it absolutely no justice. Then we need to work on figuring out how to invent smell-o-vision so you all can smell how good it is. But yeah, that's what I'm enjoying this evening. What are you fine folks enjoying on this Thursday evening? Have you enjoyed your 420 week? It has been a very interesting week indeed. I've preloaded a couple of things that I did want to talk about 420 that went down on Tuesday that I think is worth mentioning. I just want to take the opportunity actually quickly. How is the volume level coming through? I've had a few complaints from YouTube viewers recently that the audio on the lives is not coming through at a quality level. It's not coming through consistently or at a high level. So how are we sounding? I think my mic line's at a good level there. That should be a pretty good level for you. Some fizzy peach. Ooh, sounds delicious. Ben's enjoying sitting in Cambridge. Nice to see you in Cambridge. It was good to see that you managed to make it down to Cornish Hayes' event on the south coast for 420. There ended up being quite a few official and unofficial and the occasional official event that went down. Thank you for liking the stream, Al. Good to see you back here, brother. Yeah, a few events that went down across the UK. Like I said, there's 2 events that took place, both Hyde Parks, obviously Hyde Park in Leeds and Hyde Park in London. And this is one of the things that I wanted to show you, was actually look at the number of people that attended this, even though it wasn't an official event. Look at that, look at that. That's a couple of people, but that's clearly not adhering to, obviously, the social distance rules that they're saying that we're supposed to be doing at the minute. Don't know why my computer's not choosing to not load this. Ooh, that's grainy. I'm guessing that's my PC doing that, and it's not the actual quality of their drone footage. But you get my point. That is a hell of a lot of people, but actually, I think of just groups of people that have sort of gathered together, and they're just enjoying it. So actually, there's good walkways. There's some attempt, I suppose, at social distance. But it's interesting that the papers didn't really go on it so hard. This is one of the reasons we at Durham chose not to host an event for 420, is the optics and the nature of the event. We were sure that people were going to get chastised and they were going to butcher us in the news for doing this. But actually, if you look at the events, I suppose, leading up over the past few weeks since we were kind of let out and non-essential retail opened back up in other services, that hopefully this is a sign of things to come. Hopefully we can have these events kicking off every weekend, every other weekend across the summer again like we normally do. I think the absence of event last year caused a great deal of harm, I think, within a lot of people's psyche, man. Just not being able to congregate together, being able to find your crew, get together with your people and enjoy a good smoke, you know what I mean? It can be quite isolating, especially then when you think of sort of the compounding effect of the war on drugs, of the paranoia that's created by the legislation. Sounds good on YouTube. Sweet. Volume seems good on Facebook. Sweet. Oh, Ben's saying a bit quiet. Interesting. I wonder if it's a device preference. Lawrence, what are you currently watching this on? Also, Ben, what are you currently watching this on? I wonder if it's perhaps limited to the device. Because, I mean, I've got the audio bounce levels obviously down at the bottom, and I'm watching it kind of slide through orange and touching red, so I don't want to obviously turn that up too much and just end up deafening you with bass feedback or whatever's going to happen when it hits red. Yeah, you could see the clouds. You could see the clouds. I mean, the other one was that video. I don't know if this video will then work as well. Was I suppose there was incidents that went down at Hyde Park in London as well. So you may have seen like Drew's footage from down there and Tyler Green's as well from I Smoke. But there seems to be literally school kids fighting, and a 15-year-old was apparently that's what this purports to show. This knife was a 15-year-old girl got stabbed in the leg. But I mean, other than that, good gathering. A lot of people seem to share the camaraderie. There's people sort of rolling up. Peter Corbin for some reason. You're even cooking. There you go. That's the one. Look at that. Yeah, enjoying a smoke, cooking some foods. I wonder how many of these supposed 200 pound fines were actually handed out then, because it's interesting. This event and the Bristol event and the Leeds event weren't officially organised, so no one will get fined. This is again another reason why Durham and several other clubs and some of the other organisers kind of looked at this and went, we're not going to do it, because the 10 grand fine, even if it doesn't amount to anything over time, the threat of this, the being dragged through that legal system is just a headache that a lot of us don't need or want. You know what I mean? We're willing to risk the law. I'm willing to stand up to the police and host these events and challenge based on my interpretation and understanding of the legislation as it stands. And most often, in fact, I've touched wood up to this point, have walked away, you know what I mean, or made the cops walk away. And yeah, I didn't want to risk hosting an event, and I think that a few others kind of again looked at the optics of it and just went, it's too difficult for us to kind of gather this. Yeah, the mess that's left again, because predominantly, if we were to age survey the people that attended these events, they are going to be massively predominantly young people. They're going to be youngsters that are not, how do I describe this? They're in cannabis to be a cannabis consumer. It's something taboo. It's something cool. It's something novel. It makes them, better than their friends. It's something that they can stable to themselves as a piece of personality. And I think that kind of mentality and that kind of consumer, they're not interested in how it looks afterwards. They've just gone for a fucking party. They're treating it like, I suppose, like Leeds or Reading Festival, I suppose that's now every fucking festival, because that mentality and that disposable, destructive, wasteful culture is there. It's hedonistic and it's excessive. Whereas if there were organisers, I mean, anyone that's seen me at any event in the UK, even if it's not my event, you'll see me walking around picking up litter. It's an inbuilt thing. So anytime there is these organized events, yeah, there would be cleaning up, but then we almost miss the point of teaching those youngers the reason why we do that. It's not just because, yeah, you don't want fucking where you live to look shit. It's not just because of the environmental consequences and impact of this. It's, yeah, part of it is the optics of this, but it's the respect thing. You can't ask the authorities in the institution to respect you if you don't respect yourself in the fucking space that you're occupying. Easy, Kevin. Hope you're keeping well. I'm doing pretty good. This week's been a bit exhausting. I've had several blog deadlines. I think I've been live on 4, 5, 6 different things already. I think we're nearly done with the week, thankfully. But yeah, I'm good. I'm keeping well. Probably overly caffeinated. I'm sorry for the ASMR you guys just got there of me swallowing coffee. Lawrence Morval, Ben Morval. I don't know then. I don't know. I can't put my finger on this. I shall ask my sound engineer, Mr. Maka, when I see him for tomorrow for our next recording for the Simpa Life podcast. We've got Lisa Quarrell in tomorrow, who is a former police officer up in Scotland who then broke the law and illegally smuggled cannabis into the UK to treat her epileptic son. I can't remember the condition. I don't think it's Dravet's. I think it's another one of the intractable epilepsies that I can't pull out with my arse the name of out of my arse right now. But really looking forward to having a conversation with her tomorrow, and that'll be available next week. We were supposed to have that scheduled for another time, but I kind of completely screwed up the organization of that, so it will be slightly late. But you guys will be happy to know as well that we record our episode with the legendary Tommy Chong next Tuesday, so that'll be available the following Monday. So really looking forward to getting that out and seeing people's reaction, because this is going to be a very interesting podcast for me. I've been dying for a long time to have him on since we started this. He was one of the kind of cornerstone list that I created of going, they're the goals that I want to go to, and actually then once we get through Tommy Chong, we can build to other bigger name sort of guests as well. And I think this is why it's so important for me to kind of use the blogs and these lives to kind of promote that as a platform, because the larger the platform, the larger the audience base, which means the larger the likelihood of us getting other guests on, bigger named guests. I've started approaching some people that I can approach via other people, so obviously the more people we get on, we widen that network and we can really branch out. So as always, if anyone's got any suggestions or can link me to anybody that you think would be a really good guest for the Simpa Life podcast, by all means, please do drop me a line, reach out at any point on any platform. The other thing is I'll be looking to, up here, be getting a Instagram logo. We're going to try and figure out how we stream this to Instagram as well through the service, which hopefully should be coming in the next sort of week or two once I pull my finger out on that one. There you go. If whoever was asking, Fizzy Peach is Chem D, Mandarin Cookies, and Strawberry Stardog. It's quite some lineage in there, isn't it? The Chem strains are, they're a cultivar unto themselves, man. They are powerful, hyper powerful, wonderful fucking strains, and they're just so heavy, so gassy, and just love anything that came from the Chem lineage. And it's interesting there because there's basically 3 of your modern cultivar lineage lines: your dogs, your cookies, and your chems. And then from that, people interbreed to create your fruit variants and your various different flavors into that base effect of a cookie, a dog, or a chem. As always, Q&A, guys. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. Sorry, I'm just reading my notes as well, guys. I sat down to start recording at 5 o'clock. It's now 7 o'clock, so it's been a while since I've read this piece of paper. Yeah, I just want to shout out as well the Last Week in Weed blog series. If you haven't been reading that, do check it out. I think that I'll be producing the 20th issue of that next Monday, and that is a weekly catch-up of 3 of the most important or stories that I feel need some attention bringing to them, I need highlighting around cannabis or cannabis legislation, law change, that sort of thing. But definitely worth checking out. That is tasty. Probably shouldn't have smoked 3 quite heavy strains for the past few hours while doing this. That's probably why I'm slightly slower with this live stream, folks. What was the situation like down in Cornwall then, Ben? You obviously attended the Cornish Haze event on 420. How did that go down? I'm trying to find some people as well that attended the Bristol event. I think there's somewhere in the region of 700-800 people turned up to one of the usual spots for where Bristol would normally host an event. So it's great to see that, I suppose, the community or the people individually just kind of went, fuck it, we're going to go do it anyway. And it was good to see the, I suppose, London 420 at Hyde Park. They had cameras, they had those van camera units, so they were recording data, recording people's faces, clocking people going in and out, etc., which is very Orwellian and frankly unwelcomed. It was great. Sounds like you enjoyed it. The pictures, the weather looked fucking fantastic. It was the same up here. The weather was just beautiful. It's just one of those things. 420, basically, wherever you are in the UK, especially in the north, every 420 we seem to have amazing fucking weather. Going back to the 420 of 2019 where we did the Bowburn Hall first event there, it was spectacular. There was no wind, no clouds, just gorgeous weather. People just lounging around in the trees, listening to music, getting blazed. It was beautiful. There's a wedding held at the same time. You should have asked them to join in. But do you really want to make it a special day? I wonder where else. Yeah, does anybody know of any other events that went down across the UK? Because like I said, I would like to get some info together to be able to produce a blog for the website. See if anybody could let me know of any ones that they know of or any events that they've seen. I'd greatly appreciate it to be able to, like I say, knock up a blog. Yeah, my internet's been funny. It's weird. It's letting me live stream at you guys, but it's not loading web pages. Interesting. I'm quite happy that it's prioritizing my live stream over me trying to search the web. But still annoyed that it's not working, considering the sheer amount of fucking money I pay for it. Ben's got a great time going. I suppose he will, because he's been stuck indoors in the north for the past year. So actually getting down south with a bit of hot sun exposed next to the sea as well. Your nose is peeling, bloody hell. Yeah, it's kind of weather we're looking forward to for the summer. I'm looking forward to, obviously Durham, we're planning to host our event on the 18th of July, and spoke to a few of the clubs and sort of groups, and they're looking to host. Basically everybody's looking from the end of June to really fill that calendar. Obviously we've got Paradise Gardens coming up in September, I think 6th of September that starts. Then you got Product Earth somewhere in the region of 22nd, 24th, or I think the 22nd to the 24th of August as well. And yeah, other events are slowly starting to put themselves together, ourselves included. We'll be releasing a lot more details on the Durham City Cannabis Club pages. Interesting question. Which big European country is gonna legalize first? Germany, France, or Spain? Good question, man. Good question. Well, France is already doing a trial, but as you may have seen or heard if you listen to the Clara Herb podcast, Clara's a French national living out in Barcelona, and she's been involved in cannabis for quite a while now, and is quite intimately aware of what's going on with the French system, and they're trialing a recreational program and a medical program, a so-called recreational, so-called medical program, and it's under the guise of basically testing a few companies for them to get hold in the market before they would then go. Spain, I think, is quite suppressed in a lot of ways because of what they've done around personal consumptions and the creation of the clubs. Whereas then again, what we learned in the podcast talking to Clara about gangs taking over various clubs and about certain problems within the system that's been established there, I think they will have to seek to iron out that in the not too distant future. With regard to sort of the Germans, from conversations with Ben and learning more about sort of how they're criminalizing THC as a compound rather than the crop itself, and the way that the legal system is set up, given what we know about their importation of medical cannabis and their desire to build an entirely robust and domestic market for air quotes medical cannabis, I think it's somewhere in a race between, if the Germans can do it in 2 years, they'll beat the French trials finishing. Whereas when the French trials finish, in that 2 years, they'll have built the legislation, the framework, they'll have signed the deals, they'll have shook hands and done all the back alley stuff that needs to occur for those corporations to take over the country supply of cannabis and create that medical and recreational model. So they'll figure that shit out. Or the other option is actually, because they're all still three, or as they currently stand, they're all three members of the European Union. If the Union as a body collectively dealt with this, I think obviously then they'd go at the same time. There'd be outliers and resistance in the same way that the British were resistant to the 71 International UN Convention, for example. That took us until 73 before we got our shit together and put that into implementation. But yeah, in terms of, I think that's probably closest, because the European Union as a population bloc is somewhere in the region of 750 million people, somewhere like this. So it's far larger than North America combined. So Mexico, Canada, and North America, the United States of America, their populations, I think, fit somewhere in the region of, 125, 330, 330. You still get another three. You still get another USA in Europe in terms of population numbers. So that potential larger market and the cultural history of it in certain regions is very appetizing to the huge conglomerates that have become so powerful out of, well, things like companies like GW, although they pigeonholed themselves. Tilray and other companies are a bit smarter and diversified assets across the spectrum of industrial, medical, recreational cannabis, etc. And I think that the clout and the weight that they are pushing onto the European Union is very quickly going to end up changing the rules. And it's kind of a snowballing or a domino effect at this point, because the Safe Banking Act has just passed in America on 420, so that allows for federal banking of states' cash supplies of cannabis. That's then going to create a further legitimacy of a market that has been kept into a very grey area for a long time, and that's going to show the true economic boost and potential of this as an industry. That then lead to the US having to look to some form of legalization, which means they'd have to follow a similar route as Canada and Uruguay, withdraw from the international treaty, which is going to cause international uproar. When America, who were basically the founders of the 61 Convention, want to withdraw from it, it's going to have to cause that kind of conversation. I think then at that point, trading blocs like the European Union are then going to have that kind of conversation, and I think that it'll ultimately fall on some form of Canadian legalization. They seem to have the model that the powers that be want in place. It allows for maximum profitability, the continuation of criminality, and the continuation of sort of stigma and persecution, and they can pigeonhole you, maneuver you into certain boxes and go, and if you want this, you have to do this. It's an extension of the control paradigm of prohibition. But yeah, I think that if you ask me if the three independent from what I've just said about the European Union or America force in the hand, I'd say France. I'd say France are going to beat the Germans, because I think the medical industry is going to be too large for the Germans to want to risk jeopardizing with a recreational market or a so-called adult consumption, so-called recreational market or an adult consumption market. Yeah, I think that's just because if you look at America, if you look at the trajectory around the world, most places go some form of medical first, then they look towards a wider legalization. There are obviously outliers to the rules of that, but typically the reason that they do that is it's almost like stepping back off that moral soapbox. The first step back is going, oh, it's not the devil's lettuce, and it's not going to rape your children, it's not going to kill you, but it's still bad, but it can be good in this circumstance. And they have to take that progressive step down to not lose face, not lose control, to not lose the illusion that they are correct and knowledgeable and actually having any idea what the fuck they're doing. Hey, you got a question from Twitch. So what's my opinion on the Northern Independence Party? Their manifesto is downloaded. It is on one of my many screens across my desk that I do need to catch up on and read. I've had a preliminary conversation with one of their press team about trying to get somebody on the podcast, because when I approached them about drug policy, they said, yeah, we're all for legalizing cannabis. You guys know me, so you know exactly how I responded. And I asked to basically be able to have a discussion with somebody about what it is that they're aiming to do, because if they're just paying lip service and pleasantries towards the community by saying, yeah, we'll legalize, but there's no desire of a model there that isn't anti-corporate, that isn't anti-capitalist in some form of way. And I don't mean that in the sense of it's not anti-profit, it's just not anti fucking 4 or 5 people owning the companies that rule the whole goddamn thing. Because the whole idea of the Northern Independence Party, of seeking Northern independence, is to secede from Westminster, is to empower the disadvantaged communities of people to build industry, to regulate themselves, to govern themselves, to create laws and taxation that protects their people, that doesn't impoverish them, that actually helps build them up. It gives them an opportunity for prosperity and a better future. And if they're just going to support some form of Canadian legalization, they're missing the point, because that model will impoverish our communities more than prohibition does. Right now, there's 10 billion made every year in the UK on sex and drugs. Part of that is taxed and then dealt with. That's a different conversation for a different day. But the sheer volume of that trade, that means when that's happening at various different stages, kids are getting meals bought for that, clothes on their backs are getting paid for, rent is getting paid for. You know, people are looking after their relatives, are able to extend to further help their community because of the funds that are generated from the existing infrastructure and marketplace that sells cannabis, drugs, and anything. Do you know what I mean? That is what first then needs to be sought to be legitimized, because otherwise they're going to become the oppressor that they're seeking to step away from. And that's a conversation I do wish to have. As to whether I'll be able to get that, we'll see. But you know me, I'm persistent as fuck, so I'll keep emailing and wait for somebody to give me some time of day. But it's exactly the same thing I brought up with the Green Party as well. So I spoke on 420 with the Green Party drug policy and with the PCC candidate Cleo Lake for Avon Somerset, which is Bristol sort of region. And was again sort of talking with them, and they're in a policy of going, yeah, we want to decriminalize all drugs and we want to create this system of blah blah. But it's very soundbitey. It's very one sentence, here's an encompassing answer that has no real substance to it. It sounds good and it kind of placates the average person that goes, okay, that makes sense. But there's no substance to it. There's no depth. There's no real understanding of the nuance of the situation that's going down. And part of that is because it's not politically palpable for them to be seen to be doing this. But part of it is also general ignorance. And I think that's maybe where the Northern Independence Party could stand from with its drug policy. But until I've thoroughly read their manifesto, I'm on the fence. But I like the idea. I love the idea. Anything we can do to further fractionate the United Kingdom and empower the regions that have lived under this kind of draconian authoritative system is a good thing. It's a good thing. Thank you, Elite. Oh, I've missed a question. Big fan from Finland. Welcome, Rob. I apologise for the poor pronunciation of that. Going to be the last in the EU that does legalisation, unfortunately. It's weird. A lot of these sort of the Nordic regions really struggle with drug policy, and I can't quite figure out why. I don't know if is it maybe something that's cultural, is it something historic? But there are pockets developing. There's a guy I know in Norway who's sort of followed my work for quite a while, who's been opening a shop and working his way through, you know, the CBD narrative as a way to get the cannabis leaf emblem out and be able to have those wider conversations. But yeah, he's faced quite a lot of sort of backlash as well, and it seems to be more cultural than it is political. So it's not the authoritative system that's kind of as oppressive. It's almost the people are self-oppressing. Who should we vote for in the May elections? I'm never going to tell you who to vote for. I don't even know who I'm going to vote for half the goddamn time. I'm torn in even the whole process of voting. I do try to participate in most of the elections I can, because I kind of feel obligated to it. Millions died for my ability to do this, to participate in the process, and ultimately I'm fighting for a position where none of this matters in terms of the drugs. So I could be taken seriously in that realm. I could, if I chose, seek public office. I could seek to gain a ministerial seat, but I couldn't do that under the current sort of guise of it. But there is a very interesting election on May 6th, which is the PCC, the Police Crime Commissioner. Police Crime Commissioner, or in some places I think it's PCVC, Police Crime and Victims Commissioner. Don't know why some of them have got the V and some of them don't. Some of them have changed over to the V and some of them haven't. I don't know if it's just a nuance in the way they changed the wording of it or whatever else. But yeah, it's it's a bit funny, but the PCC candidates that are standing in various regions, all of the Green candidates are stood under the whip and the manifesto of the Green Party, which is to decriminalise all drugs, is to end the war on drugs as a de facto decriminalisation, so that the police authorities stop enforcing it, and then to be able to create that conversation, to create legislation to protect and regulate and legitimise the existing market. So Green candidates are pretty good to go for. There's a few independents in a few regions in PCCs, and then it's basically a case of, same in Durham at the minute, we've just got the usual three, Labour, Tories and Lib Dem, and it's going to be a case of voting for the least harmful, because there isn't an independent candidate that can rise up and actually give that narrative that we need. Labour have basically come out and said that they're against decriminalising drugs, despite what Sadiq Khan is saying to try and get re-elected in London at the minute. The Tories are in a position where they're still saying that they're not looking to do this, even though they fucking are, because we're watching all of their peers get richer and richer and invest in various companies and get golden handshakes. The Lib Dems are a lame duck party and have been since they betrayed the students in an entire generation in a general election. And their position on this, I don't even know. I can't even Google because my fucking webpage is not working. I don't know if they're on a stance for decriminalisation. I don't know what the Liberal Democrats party stance is on it. But even if they were to say that they're decriminalised, we know their promise is worth shit. We know any politician's promise is effectively worth shit. But this is the idea of someone like the PCC candidate, is that they can be of the people. So someone like Cleo Lake, she's standing in Bristol, and she's got I'd say a high chance of winning this, because in these elections it's such a small voter turnout that actually determines who is elected. So we saw in Durham with Ron Hogg on the first round of PCCs when they were created. The actions that he implemented, the things that he implemented during his time, created such a space for the community to want to support him that he was re-elected with a far higher mandate. More people turned out to re-elect him after he'd done this deprioritization, this de facto decriminalisation. He'd been helping with intravenous like drug intervention sort of sites down in places like Seaham and Middlesbrough. He was really trying to address real problems, and the people recognised this and give him that second go. Yeah, Freetown and Christiania. Who was I talking about this recently? I was on somebody's podcast. It'll come back to me. Maybe it was Cal Pacino's podcast, I think, the MMA fighter, and we were talking about the idea of Christiania. And yeah, so it's a free territory. It's a space where the people have just they've resisted. That's it. That's what it's a resistance freehold that then the Danes are about to look at it and go, oh, okay. And it's in the middle of their capital city. It's in the middle of Copenhagen. Yeah, it's hidden and obfuscated away, and they've gone, all right, keep your shit there. Obviously, they've had issues here and there with gangs and with illegal activity, etc. But sorry, I'm just thanks for the comment, Lauren. Lib Dems want to tax and regulate the market. Ooh, so are they following a Canada 2.0? I'm gonna make a note, if you don't mind, folks, to actually look into this, because I need to be more informed on the subject. Dems want legal reg. Oh no, want to tax and reg. Question mark. There you go. Some evening reading for me. Much appreciated. Yeah, but the free territories, there's a few places around the world where there are just communities, or there are even sort of housing estates or townships or unincorporated spaces that are collectives that live outside of the law, or they live with a kind of discretionary deal with the local authority that, well, that's your culture, that's your shit, you do you, we do us. And yeah, it's going to be hard to see how that's going to be protected under a legal system, because then all of the people, if Denmark did then legalize, they would then become further criminalized, further marginalized. They'd be pushed out more. And this is what I mean by legalization actually being more harmful, because it damages the existing community. We're all sat here with brands and clubs and ideas and dreams of shops and social venues and hosting events and doing all of this other stuff when it's legal. But we have to take a look at what happened with alcohol prohibition, with the repeal of the 18th Amendment in America. there was I think it was somewhere in the region of, what is it, 99 point something % of the companies and brands that existed during alcohol prohibition didn't transition through. They didn't make it. The ones that did were the ones that made the deals with the regulators, that went to the governing bodies, that went to the people and put themselves in that position so that they could monopolize from the get-go. And that's why we have a handful of motherfuckers that run alcohol instead of all of the bespoke craft breweries, all of the home brew, all of the little communities that they had built for themselves. And the same thing is going to potentially happen with cannabis, I think, if we're not careful. Yeah, it'd be more than cannabis alone, but it is something that I've wanted to consider. Part of why I do sort of what I do is to help further push the legitimizing of, or the acceptance and the normalization of drugs and drug consumption, because I have an aspiration to work through, in some small way, government, in local authority, to actually do something that the system pays me to challenge the fucking thing, to help to try to make it better, where my opinions and my ideas would be listened to, where I wouldn't just be dismissed as a druggie, as, oh, he's stoned again, you know, your pipe dream ideas, that kind of bullshit rhetoric. And I think we're probably getting closer to a point of acceptability with this, to be honest with you. It was something that I had a conversation with a few of the other activists about, but we only pulled this conversation together, I think it was in February, about the idea of setting up a group of independents to run through the candidates. But there's certain qualifying criteria that makes it a little bit difficult, and the point at which we were seeking to organise it was before we knew, frankly, that they were going to let us out for this, so we could canvass, or we would have the opportunity to be able to build a support base within the community. I think it's definitely something that I am interested. I know a few others are interested in looking into future elections, and to be able to create some form of loose association of individuals with the collection of common ideals, common philosophies and morals that could, I think, potentially build to something of meaning. It obviously doesn't have the same sort of clout as, say, the Northern Independence Party or something like that, nor would it be just a single cannabis issue. It would be there to represent a kind of an underclass, and I don't mean an underclass in the sense that they are less than. I mean that they have been pushed under the surface of society. You know, when you flick through your 5 channels or whatever on TV, and that's the world they portray to you, and anything else doesn't exist. Nah, we are the vast majority. We are the space in between the channels. You know what I mean? That's where we exist, and we are the ones who should be legitimized and given an opportunity to do this shit, man. To do this shit, to have our voices heard, to have our experiences validated, to have, you know, the consequences of the war on drugs on the individual in some way lifted, bettered, stopped. Do you know what I mean? At the bare minimum, stop it. And then after that, figure out how to recompense it, figure out how to repay and rebuild, and give people a level playing field to start from. It's all well and good you saying, oh, the war's over, but yeah, what about the millions of people who live in destitution? What about the thousands of people who live with cannabis convictions? What about the kids who grew up in homes without fathers because you tore them away and criminalized them? There's so many more other consequences to this that need to be considered when we consider legalization. So it does feel like a bit of kind of lip service from all the parties with what they're saying, because it doesn't have that substance, it doesn't have that ball. So they're just going, we'll do what the Canadians are doing, or maybe the Americans or something. We'll get them over and we'll pay them to do it, and they can set up a market and you can have the weed. They're missing the opportunity that we could become self-sustained, that we could create an industry far beyond. Cannabis is a drug. Cannabis is a physical resource to build our future. Plastics, graphene, thermal blocks, fucking canacry. All of these things are easily producible from the fucking waste materials. We can still have our fancy flavors and still enjoy our cannabis drug, but then the byproduct of this is to better our world, is to tackle climate change, is to help deal with wealth inequality, provide homes to end homelessness, you know, as a nutrient resource to provide decent diet for people around the world. There is so much fucking more of a potential to cannabis than just legalizing it so we can smoke it in a coffee shop or whatever. I haven't, Lawrence. Lawrence saying that he's read about that Ian Duncan Smith is heading an innovation type body, and is going to talk with Boris about a legalized model for the UK. There's an interesting one if you look at TIGGR, is it TGGR, which is a new innovations government, not department, like working group that was created by Boris Johnson. And yeah, the ministers involved in that are very much looking like they are connected to big cannabis corporations. So it seems that they're exploring a lot of avenues to bring them legitimacy into the industry, legitimacy so that they have a way into the industry that can continue the social control, that can continue the perpetuation of classism, of racism, and of social coercion, while then profiting from it and creating a space to go, aren't we good? We legalize cannabis. We give you people what you needed, your medicine, and get to have that moralizing and that self-perpetuating continuation of re-electability. It's just bullshit, because none of the other parties have the balls to stand up and go, this is fucking wrong. It's corrupted, it's backwards, and it's going to do far more harm to the individual, to society, and to the fucking ecology environment. Yeah, it'll generate you some money in your bank account, but it ain't going to do shit for your kids' future. Exactly, Lawrence, exactly. Descheduling it's my new wording of it. For a long time I used re-legalize, but that was quite a nuanced interpretation of what then it meant to have been legalized. I used it almost ironically in opposition to decriminalized with a capital D, to mean like the end of, you legalize all the actions that would otherwise be decriminalized, but that's far too close to legalization, and then the interpretation of that, and it's just messy. Whereas, yeah, descheduling of cannabis, which is what is hoped to occur, is the removal of cannabis from the restrictive drug controlling schedules around the world, the Schedule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 categorization, and then the subsequent punitive criminal measures that come in with the ABC categorization. But yeah, it's the expungement thing, again, fucking good start, but then we've got to figure out how to recompense that shit. And this doesn't really fill me with much faith in the British system, to be fair, because then I think of Alan Turing, who is basically credited as one of the geezers behind saving the British and saving us from in World War II with the cracking of the Enigma machine. He was rewarded for this by his government by being chemically castrated because he happened to be a homosexual at a time when homosexuality was illegal. It's not until a few fucking years ago that I think the government officially pardoned and then issued an apology for this. So they may end the criminalization, but I don't think it's going to take a long time for them to recognize and hold their hands up and go, oh fuck, yeah, God, we were wrong. Because what they're going to seek to do is create a profitable system that allows them to prop up that social control, so that they can go into certain areas and they can still demonize people, they still can persecute them, they can still use stop and search and whatever else to marginalize certain communities, to break up certain cultures and groups of individuals. Thousands of students who have been experiencing the manifesto. It's something I've been considering for a while, though, is the idea of writing a manifesto. I think when I first decided I wanted to do this a few years ago, I bought Jesse Ventura's book and Steve D'Angelo's book, and basically I read Steve D'Angelo's Cannabis Manifesto and kind of went, shit, we just need a British version of this. There's still a few holes in it in terms of issues that wouldn't then translate over, and a few things that I personally would feel need kind of ironing out over the short term and especially the long term. But I think that those models are now adaptive because we have real world data. We have, in some places, nearly a decade worth of active industry that they've scrutinized, they've recorded, they've documented, and that we can analyze, and we can then, if through an unbiased lens, look at this and then kind of go, well fuck. I mean, just they're focusing at the minute on, oh look, Colorado's made last number I saw, which was probably about 8 months ago, something like that, 2.2 billion was its like total taxation that it created over a certain period of time. And that's massive for the state when you consider the size that it is, and you then look at what they've done with that tax revenue. So we need to figure out a way that allows for that mechanism of taxation from the people that doesn't then impoverish them or enslave them to some system of licensing. And I haven't yet figured out in my own head what that would look like to write it down as a manifesto, to then stand truly on a platform. Everything I stand on at the minute, I suppose, is an ever-evolving concept. So I try to take on as much information from every region around the world to try and adapt my thinking as I go, as I said before, about changing the wording of relegalizing to descheduling. It follows their system. It makes it more achievable, because again, if you then look at the idea that I spoke of in the Chongas live stream that I've just come off, of that you can't legalize cannabis because you can't criminalize cannabis. You can't criminalize an inanimate object. You criminalize people's actions with it. So being caught in possession with it, trading it, cultivating or producing it. Do you know what I mean? And so it's a very, very fucking complex issue, I think, to just get down into a manifesto that we could stand on that wouldn't then be out of date within fucking 6 months. Do you know what I mean? Because the knowledge base is constantly changing. So I think there almost needs to be an ideological manifesto that then can be moved into an economically costed white paper, so that the manifesto would be almost like a declaration of something, like of independence, of freedom, of human rights, of whatever else, of the idea of sovereignty of consciousness, the idea that we own our what's in my head is mine, and fuck you. There is no law against, I can think perverse thoughts, I can think murderous, destructive, hateful, vile thoughts, and there is no system for police or governance of that. And the same should then be true of what I do to manipulate and alter and change that consciousness. It is, if nothing else, the only piece of me that I own. It is truly me. So yeah, it's how that then words, how that lines up is difficult, because there's people that have gone with the Freeman argument and have tried to then tackle the nature of the legal system, but the system itself is designed to self-perpetuate. It self-capitulates to its own bullshit, and it then mutates and metastasizes and gets ever more cancerous and destructive. And I don't know, it's difficult, because then a single cannabis issue that was presented in the right way wouldn't just be a single cannabis issue, because it would be an environmental issue, it would be a wealth inequality issue, it would be fucking even things like dealing with the potential crisis of things like fresh water and stuff like that, of understanding soil renutrification, of understanding how deforestation leads to desertification, and how swapping cannabis for fucking timber stops that. You know, these knock-on compounded effects, the consequences of if we deschedule and create a legal framework of cannabis, or a regulated framework of cannabis, it could benefit every industry, it could benefit every walk of human life. And I think that's far more outlandish and unrealistic to the establishment than the idea of standing on that kind of, let's just legalize cannabis and let the people smoke it. That's an easy conversation for them to talk about, the nuance of how this affects everything, because when you start to look at it, it moves us from a scarcity paradigm perpetuated under neoliberalistic capitalism to a resource-based economy, because we can grow supercapacitors, we can create batteries, we can build homes while sequestering carbon. I mean, the technology that is achievable through cannabis-derived graphene is next level in terms of energy production and energy storage. So it's far more of a larger conversation than just, I want to smoke me weed sort of thing, and I'm all for smoking me fucking weed, but it's a very long-winded answer to say that a single manifesto, I think, is A, the only thing that they would listen to, but B, is something that I couldn't produce because I couldn't stay on topic, as you've just seen by that fucking long-winded ass answer. Oh, that is tasty. Oh, I'm good. There's only one more joint left after this. Yeah, it's tasty OZK. Right, so I've just bombarded your ears with a lot of bullshit there, people. You got any Q&A for the last sort of 10? I might stick around for an extra 15. I'll see if I can actually finish this joint. Key man, you gotta have something you gotta want to ask me. Portugal decriminalized the use of all drugs in 2001. Possession and use of small quantities of these drugs. As a public health issue, not a criminal one. They did indeed, T-Sean. But the Portuguese decriminalization system has many massive holes. So Portugal missed the opportunity to regulate and tax several billion euro year trade, and instead left it in the hands of the criminal market. So for all the end consumer isn't criminalized for very small amounts of personal possession, less than 10 days of your personal quantity, a very obtuse and open-ended interpretation of a rule so that they could pigeonhole down what 10 days is to you rather than you saying what 10 days is to you. Violation of this would then result in you being put in front of a panel of 3 experts, one a psychiatrist, one a psychiatrist or public health worker, some government-bodied individual, and another sort of healthcare professional, and they basically ask you, how are you doing? Are you all right? And they do engage with you in that sort of way as long as you placate to the system. As soon as you then offer resistance, or if you are caught with a comorbid crime, if you're caught committing another offence at the same time, it kind of removes that discretion of decriminalising. It doesn't allow for cultivation or production of substances. It doesn't allow for large possession of, say, your own. So if you then produced, I don't know, say you had your drug of choice was amphetamine, and you then made your own base substitutes, and you produce that, and you'd end up with quite a large quantity. Same if you produce something like LSD. LSD produces vast amounts of doses, even in the smallest amount of syntheses. You would then face still serious criminality. You then trade with a friend a drug that's not protected. You then, if you sell drugs, if you then traffic or move them around, there's still a lot of the criminalising there. It's basically what they've done is create a small space of exemption that if you have an arbitrary amount of whatever, you will not immediately be pushed through that criminalising system. But that's still only discretionarily offered in the same way that the checkpoint system in the UK is discretionarily offered in a few regions to a few sort of people. So a lot of people still fall through those cracks. If they're undesirables to the system, they will not be afforded the same benefits as somebody middle class from the country, you know what I mean? It was a start. It started the conversation massively. It did start the conversation massively, but unfortunately Portugal missed a very great opportunity in 2018, I think it was. They voted down a form of legalization in their country, and it is rumoured, and quite a lot of people have put credence to this, that Tilray and other Canadian corporations were basically whispering in the ears of the centre left and the Communist Party to not back the bill. And then I think it was like 5 weeks or 5 months, it was 5 something afterwards, they announced the Europe's largest medical cannabis grow operation in Portugal to serve the needs of Europe, rather than allowing Portugal the opportunity to create a domestic market to then be able to export that and actually create a national resource, rather than having their national resources exploited. So yeah, decriminalisation, it sounds good, because in our heads we deconstruct that as it's the end of criminalizing. There are no punitive measures for what we do with drugs, but in reality decriminalization is a capital D. It's a compound term, it's a legal term, and in that it is either de jure or de facto. So it's either through policy or through discretion, and even then it's very narrow, because under the international and the state law it's still classified a certain way. Otherwise you're in violation of the international conventions. Granted, doesn't seem to do anything if you violate the conventions, but that's the mechanism that's in play. So legalization on the other side does nothing to challenge, again, those international conventions. It just creates a monopolistic market in country for a handful of individuals to enrich themselves from the very same people who have been oppressed by the laws that were voted for by the people who are now rich. Small system. Hi there. I like how you spell hi with hi. There will be. We're looking to host our first event back on the 18th of July in Durham. More details will be released on the Durham City Cannabis Club page as and when we sort of want to release them and build it up. We're still looking at various locations and ways of doing this. I've got a few conversations upcoming with some potential venues as to whether we're going to seek to do this privately or publicly. The only issue that I have and the only reservation that I've got is, like I said, the COVID regulations. I'm more than happy to go and be irritable to the police and go and have a conversation and defend us gathering several hundred people together in a space under normal circumstances. Under the COVID regulations, I have not done enough of my legwork to understand them. For all I've seen, quite a lot of the fines and stuff then go unpaid. I do not want the extra personal hardship to fall on my shoulders of a potential 10 grand fine that I simply could not afford. But if we can hit this June 21st date, like we say, and we get to the end of social distance measures, we get to the end of the fines being in place for us organising this kind of thing. We've already won back in certain ways, or we've delayed through the Kill the Bill protests, true restrictions of protests, so we can still organise under the auspice and emphasis that we are a protestable. So we're a celebration of cannabis culture while gathering together to protest the archaic and rather draconian laws of this country. Oh, my eyes have gone square from all the words. Yeah, agreed. Lawrence saying he never support the Tory model, but it shows that they're having to change their position. It's interesting, yeah, because it's hard to look at it. It's hard to tell. Well, actually, it's not hard to tell, but you can see why some people would then vote for it of going, oh, look, it's compassion, it's whatever else. They give us medical cannabis. They did this. They're doing this. And if they then create this access of legal model and then go, actually, well, what we're going to do is we're going to restrict the amount of THC on the market. So the strains will only be capped at 15% and extracts will be capped at 40% or whatever arbitrary numbers that they pick. And it will just create that further problem of a criminalized market, because they're not interested in making right what was wrong. They still think they're right. They still think that we shouldn't have it. We shouldn't be able to have the opportunity to have that class mobility, to have that opportunity to grow our way out of their enforced and imposed austerity and the poverty that we live under because of socio-economic factors created by government policy. They don't want to give us that shit, so they're gonna move with it enough that it makes them money and they can present it as doing it for social progression. Oh, we're helping the children with epilepsy. Oh, we're helping these people. Oh, we're doing this. They can shroud it in that appearance, but ultimately it's all about fucking money. So that's what I'm saying. Labour if I don't know what the fuck Labour did to themselves. Jesus God Christ. They've butchered themselves as a party. They've made themselves as much of a joke as the Liberal Democrats. We're in a one-party state right now. If Boris Johnson couldn't lose his premiership under the fucking situation that's just occurred through COVID, that fucker's a clown for life at this point. Clown king for life. So, yeah, the Tories are going to be in perpetual rule with this, so they're inevitably going to be the ones that give us this model, and it won't be a referendum, it won't be a vote, it will be a, here, have it. And it will appear so juicy and lovely to us, and the media will package it and feed it to us in such a way that it'll be weeks and months and years before we start to understand the damage and the nuance of what is occurring within the finer print of these legislative changes. 52 and all I wanted to do is smoke weed. Give up hope for 35 years. I really hope not. I can understand the feeling. I've been there myself, and I will probably be there again very soon. It's part of their tactic. It's all part of their tactic. It's to wear us down slowly over time. So every time we see them challenging drugs in a movie or on TV, every time we see a police raid, every time we see an article of this crop raided and this happened, it all perpetuates this reinforcement of an idea that we're wrong, that we're never going to get anywhere. But ultimately, they have to tell this lie every day. Every day they have to perpetuate, oh, skunk psychosis and addiction, and oh, it fucks up this and it does that. They have to not only present that lie, they have to spend all their energy hiding the fucking truth. All we have to do is echo it, speak it, bring it to life wherever the fuck we can. And in doing that, I mean, I find hope the most when I'm feeling it. And I've been out, I've nearly sacked in the club, I've nearly sacked in all of this a few times. And the hope that I find is in the other. And it's not in someone that already knows the cause and is already converted and is already evangelicalizing to others. It's in somebody that doesn't know something about cannabis, that with insight and curiosity and intrigue, here's something that I've said or thought of 1 billion times, but to them is new information. And I watch them light up again. And to see that is powerful. That is reinvigorating. That, to me, it gives me the will to go on in that sense. It really does. Because, I mean, fuck, I know fucking too much. I read far too much. I've learned far too much. And I continue to engage in this. Not too much, but quite hyper-aggressively, I suppose, in a certain way. And there are days, I feel hopeless. I feel lost. I feel irrelevant. I feel like I'm screaming into the goddamn abyss. And then there are other days, like 420 with the Green Party event, where I dominated parts of that talk, where the entire panel were agreeing. These academics, doctors, potentially future PCCs, people that will hold those positions of authority, hearing these ideas. And not only that, they were showing that same interest, that same intrigue, rather than going, yeah. They want to know. And I think that now more than ever, because of the consequence of things like CBD being everywhere, because of hemp being in shampoos and in toothpaste and starting to reappear again, and the little emblem of the leaf reappearing, the hope is there. The hope is fucking there. And there will come a day that the average person will just be left the fuck alone. There'll still be systems of constraint and systems of restriction and of over-regulation. But fuck, there'll be people like me that are going to goddamn fight it, because I'm not going anywhere. There isn't a legalization model out there that's going to placate me enough to stop me shouting at you guys on a screen, writing blogs, producing podcasts, speaking on stages. Because the need will still be there. Yeah, exactly, Lawrence. This is something I try to draw attention to all the time. If I say to people that the industry that is here today, the community and the culture that is here today, it is built entirely on the sacrifice of the previous generation, of the previous culture, of the previous group of individuals that took up this mantle, that decided to carry this torch and bravely step and bring a light into the darkness of this. They carried this truth, and and that's something that needs to be honored within this. We need an accurate recording of the history of the of everything. We need to document how we got here, and we need to create an account of what truly occurred. We can't just have a system be legalized and then in the future. Is my screen blank? Is that what you're saying? Do I not have a screen on? Can you not see me? Sorry, I'm waiting to see if Growlney, who is it? Growlney Limpney? Cool name. Never mind. Anyway, yeah, exactly. Evening, it's Sonzi. It's 420 Green Party anywhere where I can watch it. It will be available on the Simpa Life Facebook page when they've put it up. They recorded it live, but they're waiting. I'm not sure what for, but I'm sure it will be coming up very soon. I think they cut off the first 5 minutes of recording because we were a few minutes late with the setup for whatever reason. But I will be making it available across all my platforms, and I'll be uploading it to the website as well via YouTube. Yeah, very good place to start. Endocannabinoid system. But to some people, that sounds like science fiction. They're not going to get their heads around that. They're like, what? They can't grasp sort of the concept of it, or some people can't. Some people take to it really easily because that's kind of the way that their mindset works, and then it's a good way into a conversation about the diversity of the plant, of different cultivars, and all the various multifaceted aspects of this plant and the culture that has arisen around it to protect it for generation after generation after generation. Hi, Eleanor. Screen's okay. Oh, cool. Maybe it was just Gaulney. I can't see. All the letters are merging together. Gaulney Limney. Maybe it was just their screen. Got me worried there. What was the other question? Somewhere up here. What's my opinion on Outlaw? I like what he's sort of doing. I appreciate the multifaceted approach that he is taking. I've been lucky enough to have a good few sort of conversations with him, and been sort of talking with him back and forth on a few different social media platforms. Managed to get, obviously, we did an interview. We've got an exclusive interview actually, if you want to check that out on the simpalife.com, and you should be able to read a written interview that I did with him. He will be a future guest on the podcast as well. He's just under legal restriction from something that he's filming at the minute. So as soon as that's dealt with, that's weird. That's the second person that said there's something wrong with the Twitch. Sorry about that, Jackie. Hopefully it will sort itself out. But yeah, as I've kind of had the back and forth with him about the balaclava and the criminality thing, but it works well for a character. He plays the character well, and I think that captures the imagination and the attention of the mass public and the mainstream media a lot more easily. Oh, sorry, it's Mary sitting and Jackie, I think. Sorry, guys. Comments come in sometimes. I'm like, wait, what have I done? What did I do? What did I do? But yeah, I appreciate sort of the way he's going down with things. And yeah, I'm interested as much as everybody else to kind of know who he is. I don't know him. I don't know who he is. And I think that kind of adds to the mystery around the character. as it were. And again, I think that having a Robin Hood-esque sort of type character appear, as it were, is good for morale of the culture in a certain way. Do you know what I mean? It's also inspiring to some people to be able to look at the work that he's doing and kind of go, we can do that, I can do that, I can get active, I can help in some way. And so I think in that sense it's a good thing that he's doing what he's doing. And I think he's got potential to challenge the Home Office in the correct way with what he's doing. Support him fully with that. We've provided as much help as I can with various sort of bits, and I think that it's got a legitimate path. But I think that the action of asking for decriminalisation plays into their hands a bit, plays into their narrative, and helps perpetuate this continuation of the classism, racism, and control structure that pervades prohibition. If you take out the drugs, it's still, the structure is still, that's what they want. They just want to change it over, and we've seen this with, so you've got Section 60 over Section 23. Section 23 is the misuse of drugs law, stop and search. Section 60 under the terrorism law means that they can stop you, detain you for anything, anywhere, at any time. So they've already now developed another apparatus by which to deal with that. So then as they can demonize certain subgroups, they can demonize certain political ideologies or certain collectives of individuals, they will then just find another way to create a space for demonization to then be able to categorize them under terrorism. And then once they've got a structure that allows for that social control and the limitation of social mobility and class mobility, then they'll quite happily end that war on drugs, because of the apparatus that pervades it is under a new guise. It's installed in the new software. What's the current policy in Durham? I wish, T-Sean. And yeah, I need to do an updated video to it. Things got pretty shitty pretty quick, to be honest with you. We were obviously living the high life with Ron Hogg, or the late Ron Hogg, rest in peace. Was our police crime commissioner at the time, our PCC. We had the legendary Mike Barton, who is somebody that I am trying quite hard to get as a guest on the Simpa Life podcast. And the Simpa Life podcast. And yes, he retired not long after sort of Ron stepped down. And then, yeah, the combination of these two together meant that they held the keys to policy. So they were able to create something called deprioritization, which was they created a system of incentive within their offices to not go after low-level offences. They then created the checkpoint scheme, which was a diversionary scheme that meant if you were caught for low-level drug dealing, possession, cannabis cultivation, even I think shoplifting and various other sort of low-level crime, you could avoid going through the courts and through the criminal system by going on this checkpoint scheme for 4 months, and you basically turn up with a few things and you kind of go, oh, drugs are bad, or yeah, stealing's bad, or whatever it is. You sign a bit of piece of paper saying you promise not to break the law during these 4 months. That's all it says. It actually says that. It doesn't say these 4 months and then afterwards, because it's a contract between you and them that if you meet that stipulation after 4 months, they're supposed to not put that on your permanent record, because it's considered a court diversionary outcome or something like that. There's a term for it that means that basically you've been prosecuted, but there's been no prosecution, so you've gone through the system but you haven't come out with a conviction. But yeah, so now we inherited, who do we get? We got Steve White as intermediary PCC after Ron's death, and Jo Farrell, who was Mike Barton's deputy, she stepped up as chief constable. So she does some of the things that Mike was trying to do, but they've kind of turned and had as it were, a revolt face on policy with a certain few things. So certain discretion isn't there. Raids have increased. Police are more active in areas where previously they recognised that actually their presence was causing more problems than their absence. But obviously we have a new PCC election, which will more than likely replace Steve White. As to what their individual policies are going to be, we'll wait to be seen. I will, in the same way that I did with Mike and Ron and various other people, pester them until they give me an opportunity to speak to them, at which point I can then try and figure out how it's going. Mohammed saying Twitch stream is down. I don't know what maybe it's because my internet's been a bit funny, guys. It's not really fully loading any of the web pages that I wanted to use on the other scenes as well. So I wonder if maybe it's just limiting. It seems to be working all right on YouTube and Facebook. It's weird that it's Twitch that it's prioritized to not let me stream on. What else we got here? I'll answer this one more question, then I'm gonna bounce because I need some food and I've just realized how late it is. It's very confusing to my brain because I'm watching this get darker out back and I'm thinking that's still early. It's like it's not. It's nearly summer. This is why the time is gone. Do you think combustion should be encouraged way of consumption? Encouraged is the wrong word, I would say. If we look at the science of, say, bioavailability, combustion of raw plant is one of the best ways to get almost instantaneous access to the cannabinoids and the terpenes. Yes, the process of combustion does it to such a degree of the temperature that it will actually destroy a lot of the compounds, but it would then also cause carboxylation, oxidation, and changes through the structure of the plant, so then you get a wider profile of sort of cannabinoids. Extracts can be useful, but the issue with extracts is the compounding effect of extracting any of the detrimentally present chemicals or compounds from the plant. So anything that's being picked up through fertilizers, through chemical feeds, even anything that's there, molds, etc., and things like this that can then be compounded into it and then can be very dangerous, because when you're dabbing at a lower temperature, so you're potentially not destroying what is destroyed through combustion in terms of mold spores and bacteria, etc., things like this that could then cause issue to the lining of the lungs. There's an interesting sort of school of thought that's coming out, and it's been trying to figure out the question, why don't pure cannabis consumers get lung cancer? And it seems to be that cannabis, when combusted, acts as a bronchial dilator, so it expands the lining and increases the absorption of the lungs, but it also increases the functionality of the lungs. It also works to protect cell structure. So there's something there that, even though the combustion of fire, you are burning and inhaling smoke and carbon, it's not showing to be cancerous or as destructive and disruptive to cell development as tobacco. So obviously then smoking pure, you're reducing a lot. There's still an element of tar within this. There's some of the science studies that were done on this were highly manipulated, which misrepresented it massively. But it's moderation, and then you come to a concept of what we know around, say, cancer. If cancer needs a viable host to take hold, so if you are in a carcinogenic environment, or if you are consuming something that's cancerous, if you are within better health, and if you are then also consuming something that is anti-canceral, then you are protecting yourself against that. So there is an argument to be made, like say, for the combustion of cannabis, protecting against the potential carcinogens caused by burning carbon. Yeah. So in terms of what should be encouraged, I would just say to find a personal relationship with cannabis, because if we follow that line of thinking too far, we end up playing again their game. We get lost within it. It's a freedom argument. I can go and eat food. I can go and eat McDonald's for as long as I want and get diabetes and get obesity, get complications of heart disease and all kinds of other illnesses and whatever else. And that's my free fucking choice. So the same then has to be true of cannabis and of everything else. It's about freedom. And if you then deny people an option that they know is a potential, you just create an illicit market for people to be supplied, and then you amplify potential risks, potential harms. You minimize potential benefits. You minimize the potential wider benefits to society as well. Yeah, exactly. It's Sonzi. He says that personally thinks that vaping should be encouraged. Yeah, there's the evidence is as always is a bit shitty. I myself will always be, I think, a combuster of cannabis, because I love the ritual of rolling. I love the art of it. I love sharing a joint with people. I love sitting down and having that commonality in that commune with others. It's a very deeply personal and quite sort of tribal experience to me, I guess. And I don't think I'll ever sort of step away from that, you know what I mean? Thank you for sharing on the business can feed, Lawrence. Right, it's been an hour 15. I said I'd only be an hour, so you got an extra 15 for free. I am sorry for the twitches. If you can still hear me out there, if I'm frozen, or if I'm just across the screen, it has been a privilege. It has been a pleasure. Thank you as always for joining me. I'm gonna go enjoy the rest of this. Find some food. Big shout out, thanks to Next Level Flavors for all the Next Level Flavors. Do appreciate the fucking free tea as well. Love me a free fucking tea. Right, it's been a privilege. It's been a privilege, folks. It's been a privilege, folks. Do hope you will check out the Simpa Life podcast. Remember, this week's episode is available now on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts. It's available anywhere you can get a podcast, really. You can watch the video of it on Facebook and YouTube at the Simpa Life. It features Clara Herb. Well worth a view. Really had a good laugh with this one. Learned a lot about sort of cannabis culture and legal changes in France. We learned about the clubs in Spain, and is it's just a really all-round good fucking podcast. And yeah, there's 25 others out there that you can check out from various guests. We've had doctors, professors, we've had former undercover cops, various people from all walks of life, and we will be diversifying ever more in the future. Check out simpalife.com for blogs and everything else. And yeah, go be fucking happy. Go do something that you really enjoy. Go eat something gluttonous and enjoyable and juicy and nice, and watch some shit on TV or whatever it is that you choose to do to relax. But it's been a pleasure and a privilege.